Hello and welcome back to Still Smoking Tape, episode 7. I'm excited to get back to this. Took a few days off over the weekend. Just did a lot of research on the Big 12 since we had some Big 12 episodes coming up, and I'm excited to get back into it. We have 2 Saturdays really till college football comes back, and so that roughly gives me a week and a half to finish up these last 2 conferences, the Big 12 and the Big 10. Left the Big 10 for last for the Big 10 people out there because I know they would appreciate it. At the very end of the season when they're most getting hyped up for it, throw it in there, you know what I mean? I'm excited about the Big 10 this year, but I'm very excited about the Big 12 this year. I think last year it was kind of a boring conference, but I think this year it's going to be a lot more, there's going to be a lot more areas where teams can really show up and show how much they can improve in this new NIL landscape. I think they have a lot of interesting programs in there. Some of them storied and historied programs. Some of them not so much. But I think either way, it's going to be a good year in the Big 12. I don't see it going the way it went last year. But this is what I have in my hand today for episode 7, and let's get right into it. I wanted to start off with the reigning Big 12 champs, Texas Tech. I'm not a fan of the way they're going about building their team necessarily. I kind of see an issue with the talent acquisition that they go after. They kind of go after defensive linemen and front seven guys, and like they kind of supplement with the portal like that, which I think is good. But I don't think that you find success in just a good defense. Like I think that's why they like had the struggles they ultimately had last year in the playoff, is because you don't have a consistent offensive guy or scheme to be able to give you wins when you really need them. And I think in the Big 12 especially, I think a defense will carry you as far as your offense is willing to take it. I don't think that last year they had the offense necessarily to be a playoff team. I know they still made the playoffs. They still won the Big 12. I don't think they had the offense to be able to get it done. Did they have the defense? Of course, 100%. But I think the talent disparity had a lot to do with what exactly led up to them making the playoff in the first place. But obviously they finished undefeated in the Big 12 last year. Conference champs. They fell short in the playoffs, like I said. Quarterback was kind of the place that they circled, and they were like, okay, we have everything we think we need. We just need to go get a quarterback. And as much as I would have agreed with that, the way they went about it was not great. I don't think they actually looked into the character of some of the guys that they were talking about bringing in. Like, you got a guy that you thought you knew in Brendan Sorsby. You bring him in, and obviously if you're a college football fan, you know, but if you don't know, Brendan Sorsby was basically gambling on games while he was at Cincinnati and I believe Indiana as well. And so you can't be doing that. At first, the NCAA didn't really have a backbone when it came to that, and they were kind of like, yeah, we'll let him play. Makes no sense whatsoever. You have to draw a line somewhere. I mean, the NCAA at this point is looking to be just a brand name. I mean, it looks like there's no power at all in the name of it. But I think that would have been a huge disgrace to the game if he would have trotted out and played Texas Tech. And I agreed with the teams that were saying, yeah, we're not going to be playing you guys in any sport if you're going to go along and have a judge agree that this guy who's been gambling on games, which is the one no-no in like all of professional sports, yeah, we're just going to have him back out here. He's just going to roll out and play quarterback for us this year. I mean, especially because you're already the most like talented team in the conference, and then you get caught or one of your players gets caught and you just try rolling along with it and like getting into play. I understand they're hungry for success over there, but you got to draw a line at some point and say, look, this is about the integrity of the game. This is not about if a kid deserves to play or not, or what mistakes he made. I mean, it's about the integrity of the game. You can't roll out a quarterback that could be betting on his 3+ touchdowns or his under 3 touchdowns or whatever you want to say. To me, that was a huge offseason lowlight for this program, for this team. I think that has a lot to do with Joe McGuire. I'm not a huge Joe McGuire fan. I think he's a little in over his head in a lot of situations, like him calling out Texas and all this. And I mean, like, Texas would dog walk them. I mean, the thing is like, you got to understand, you got to know your place. And I think that he's got a little bit of a big head from last year, and like he thinks that they're like the top dog in the Big 12, which like obviously they're the Big 12 champs. I can't like say that he's wrong, But at the same time, like, it wasn't like it was a dominant run the entire way, and then like you went to the playoff and won a game. And no, you got dog walked in the playoff. And like if you played Texas right now, you'd get dog walked. I mean, that's just how it is. I mean, Joe McGuire needs to calm down a little bit. I don't think he's a bad coach. I think he knows what he's doing. But like he's a Texas football guy. He's a Texas high school football guy. So like if there's a way he can cheat, pay, and do whatever he can to win games, he's gonna do it. I don't love his character, and I think that's a lot of the reason I think he chose Sorsby in the portal and brought him in. He overlooks people's character sometimes, and people murmured about it and rumored about it at Cincinnati. Oh, this guy's betting on games, blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't a big deal until they paid him $6 million to come be their quarterback. And it turns out he's been gambling the whole time. So don't love it for Texas Tech. I think it's a bad look on the program, and especially a bad look for Joey McGuire, in my opinion. But what's said is said. They attacked the portal, like I said, extremely aggressively. They supplemented a lot of the losses on defense from the NFL. I think they had 3 or 4 defensive linemen / linebackers get drafted. They had the one guy, the linebacker. He was a Heisman finalist or something. I mean, they were pushing to for him to get a Heisman, but I don't know. I think that with how much P4 talent they brought in the transfer portal, they are still far and away the best Big 12 team by talent, for sure. They're still far and away that. There is some teams who will surprise some people this year, talent-wise. There's some teams that brought in some 5-stars. Like, I think Arizona brought in 1 5-star. I think Utah brought in 1 5-star. I think BYU maybe brought in 1 or 2. There's some teams that also brought in some 5-stars, but also supplemented with some 4-stars. So, I don't know. I'm not completely sold on them fully yet. Just because when you lose that much NFL talent on defense and you try to supplement it with P4 talent, it doesn't always work out. I've seen it. It doesn't always work out. But it is what it is. To me, this team has the most pressure on them out of anybody else in the Big 12. Not only with the whole Brendan Sorsby gambling, whatever thing, that obviously adds a little bit of pressure to it as well. But I think also they have the most talent, and with the most talent comes the most pressure most of the time. So they can't be upset with anyone but themselves about where they've gotten this, like, up to this point in the pressure cooker of the Big 12, because they did it themselves. You know what I mean? It's not like they just randomly one day all of a sudden decided they have the most pressure on them. No, it's a collective thing. They have so much talent. They're far and away the best recruiting and money team, I'd say, in the Big 12. So they have a lot of pressure on them. I think quarterback play is going to be insanely crucial. I mean, the one thing they wanted to go supplement was a quarterback. They went and got one. Now they don't have one. So I think it's Will Hammond is supposed to be playing quarterback for them. I've seen some of his tape from a couple of different places. I don't think that he is necessarily like a game changer. I think they're kind of destined to be they're kind of destined to be the team they were last year. You know what I mean? Where the quarterback kind of holds them back just a little bit. I do think that they will not have as dominant of a run in the Big 12 this year as they had last year. I think last year was kind of an unprecedented run for them. And I know this year they don't play BYU, but like I still think that like it's not going to be as easy. And I don't think the Big 12 championship game is going to be nearly what it was last year. I think it'll be a very competitive game. But offensive consistency will lead to them winning the big games. Even though they don't play BYU, they still play a few big games. And some of these teams in the Big 12 are not they're not slouches. Like if you play those teams at home, you're gonna have a rough time. I have them going 10-2 this year. A lot of people say that's probably a pretty hot take. I'm here to say I think it's somewhat fair. I see a little bit of regression from last year. I do. I think last year a couple things went their way. They had a crazy talented team last year. I don't think they have that same talent this year. I think they have a floor of 8-4 though. I mean, with the talent they have, their floor has to be at 8-4. I don't see them losing more than 4 games this year. And then ceiling, I would say they can still go undefeated. 11-1 wouldn't surprise me, but I can still see them going undefeated this year. It's not out of the question whatsoever. They have the talent to do it. It's just more about the quarterback play. If Will Hammond decides to come out here and shock the world, then they can go undefeated. No problem. But that's all I have to say about Texas Tech. Next up, we'll go to Iowa State. Iowa State, in a very peculiar position. They lose their head coach, Matt Campbell. Jimmy Rogers comes in and takes over for him. It was very weird the way they lost Matt Campbell. It was kind of like the Penn State head coaching search had been going on for way too long, and they just kind of settled on Campbell. To me, at least, I don't know. I don't think Matt Campbell's a guy you should ever settle for, but I mean, it ended up happening. They finished 8-4 last season with Campbell. They didn't have a great record in the Big 12. They lost, I think, 4 Big 12 games. Not great if you're trying to build an actual competitive culture there. And I think he did a good job of that, but I don't think that – I think it's going to take a lot of Iowa State. I really do think that. It's going to take a lot of Iowa State to build a good football program there, because I do think they are more of a basketball school, but it is what it is. They do still – like, from the foundation that Matt Campbell has laid, they still have a defensive culture, especially like a top 6, top 8 defensive culture in the Big 12. Iowa State is kind of known for their defense. Last year they had a great defensive year, but like I said, it only led to an 8-4 season, which I say only led, but with what they had last year, they kind of underperformed with losses at, like, I think they had 2 big injuries last year for their cornerbacks. I think they had some other injuries on defense as well that kind of held their team back and kind of held the ceiling down. But they still have the defensive culture. They completely revamped the roster, pretty much 75 new guys, including freshman recruits and then also transfer portal additions. 75 new guys is a lot of people, man. That is a lot of people, and that's a lot of turnover in 1 year. And not that I'm saying it doesn't work, because I think in certain situations it can work. I don't really know what all Jimmy Rogers is really bringing over, but it's going to be interesting. It's not, like, to say the least, it's going to be interesting. I think Jimmy Rogers has to come in and early on establish a new identity of the program, 100%. If he comes in and he keeps this defensive culture of, like, we're gonna hold you to like 20 to 30 points a game, and we're gonna do our best on offense, but you're not gonna score more than that, then I think that's a huge thing for them. I think that to get Iowa State to build the program you want to build there, it takes multiple seasons of consistent defensive output. And same thing on offense. Like, I don't know what he's really bringing over on quarterback and everything like that, but they're replacing, like, essentially Rocco Beck, which is like he's a good quarterback, but he's not anything anybody's over the moon happy about. I mean, I think that he can bring in somebody better than him. And I expect the offense to be a little bit better than it was last year, just because the offense was not great. And then I expect the defense to probably take a small step back, but not too bad, just because I think the culture is still there. And I think that the guys that he's going to bring over, Jimmy Rogers, the guys that he's going to bring over is, like, their defensive coordinators are not no slouch. Like, it's not like these guys, you just don't know who they are or anything like that. I think that it's going to be an interesting year for them, though. I don't think you can really compare this team to last year's team. To me, that's extremely hard to do, because if you look at this year's team and you look at last year's team, it's completely new for the most part. The only real consistency is the few guys who decided to stick around to Iowa State after Campbell decided to leave and go to Penn State. I think they had 55 guys hit the portal after Matt Campbell left for Penn State, and I think 20 to 25 of them ended up going straight to Penn State and following Campbell. So the guys who didn't follow Campbell, the guys who didn't go to the transfer portal, those are going to be the leftover guys, the leftover foundation pieces that Iowa State is going to have to use to build on. And I think Jimmy Rogers knows that, and I think the guys, especially staff-wise, that he brings in, quarterbacks coach and tight ends coach, that's going to be a big role. And so I can't remember the exact number of coaches that he's bringing in, but I know that whoever is taking over those 2 position groups has a lot of work to do, because those were 2 positions that at Iowa State were pretty solid for the entirety of Matt Campbell's tenure there. So it's going to be an interesting year. I don't expect a whole lot out of them this year. Not year 1 of Jimmy Rogers, but maybe I think it took Matt Campbell 12, 13 years to get Iowa State where it was. And I know he was competing in the Big 12 a couple of those seasons and stuff, but it takes time at Iowa State. And I do think that it'll probably take them at least 3 or 4 years. Unless they start throwing some money at the portal and throwing some money at recruiting, I do think it'll take 3 or 4 years to get guys in there that they can develop and they can turn into the stars of Iowa State for the future. So projection, I have them going 4-8. Floor of 3-9 and ceiling of 7-5. I think that with how hard their schedule is this year, I think 4-8 is not. That's not crazy to say. They don't play an easy schedule whatsoever. Like they get Iowa out of conference. They have another, I think, tougher out of conference game. Like they don't have any. They don't have any spots on the roster where like they can pick up like maybe they have 1 or 2 games where they'll pick up like an automatic win. But like other than that, I don't see anything on their schedule that says, "Oh, this team can surprise some people and win like 7 games." No, I think like at the max, they're a bowl team. Unless Jimmy Rogers just comes out and just shows everybody that hey, it's about X's and O's over here, and we got the players and personnel to do it. He didn't bring that many people with him, other than like aside from coaching staff. He didn't bring that many actual players with him, which was kind of surprising. But compared to other head coaches, he didn't bring as many people as I think a lot of people expected him to bring. So Iowa State kind of got the short end of the stick on that one. Well, yeah, that's Iowa State. Next, we're gonna go to Arizona. So, huge improvement last year. Their season last year was really centered around Noah Noah. Let me pronounce this right. Noah Fafita. Sorry. Noah Fafita is kind of who their season centered around last year. His improvement. Last year he was a junior, and he kind of took the conference by storm, and then I think he led them to, I think it was 9-3 or 9-4 or something like that. So like I think they had a great year last year under him, and I think that they're looking to improve upon that. But like I think that with him going into his senior year and him being like a driving force of their improvement last season, their team is kind of primed to go compete for the Big 12. Like they're the kind of team where no one really says anything about them in the offseason, and like a lot of people I know, they focus more on like Arizona State when they think about Arizona football. They think Arizona State, they think Kenny Dillingham, they think all those things. I personally did not know a whole lot about Arizona's football program until last season, and like I think that over the course of that season, it showed me a lot about the quarterback that they have. He's kind of an underrated guy, and I think it says a lot about the way that they're trying to build their program. And I think they're trying to build their program around a few guys and like personnel people, and I don't mind that at all. And he's going into his senior year, and he had a fantastic year last year, but he loses his 2 best wide receivers, which is not what any senior quarterback wants to hear going into his senior year. I think that the guys that they get, or the guys that they already have gotten out of the portal and out of recruiting classes and stuff, I think the way those guys mesh in with this quarterback is going to say a lot about how the offense performs compared to last season. I think last season they were among like the top 3 or 4 offense passing wise in the Big 12. And I think for that to continue this year, they got to go find some guys, and I think they did find a couple of those guys where the wide receivers just kind of stick out on a piece of paper. You know what I mean? Where you see the guy and you're like, "Oh, wow, he's 6'4". Oh, okay. So he runs a 4.5. Like, or 4.4, whatever you want to say. But like you got to find those guys, and I think they did bring a couple of those guys in. And to me, the receivers and the offensive line determine the ceiling of the team. I don't want to say just the offense. I want to say the team, because this offense is good enough to keep them in games even when their defense isn't playing well. They returned their starting running back from last year, which is huge. They returned the backup running back from last year, huge. They're returning a running back room, and I think they returned 3 or 4 of their 5 offensive linemen. So you get a lot of returning production, and then you match that with new wide receivers, new weapons for Noah Fafita, and then you just gotta go let him handle the offense. I think that there's something small to say about his health. I think he's got to stay healthy this year. I think that's a big thing. But to me, they're the greatest dark horse in the Big 12. If he stays healthy, if the offense stays healthy, if they don't lose a lot of guys early on in the season to injuries or anything like that, I think that this is a dark horse team to go compete and be in the Big 12 championship. I think this is a team that not many people think about, and I think this is, like I said, people think of it as a basketball school. And I think this is a great opportunity for them to show up and show out and be like, hey, man, it's the NIL era. We can compete in both now. Like, we're here. We've arrived. So I think that's going to be great. I think building a solid defense will definitely help. They brought in a new defensive coordinator. Or, not a new defensive coordinator, a new linebackers coach, I believe. And I believe a new secondary coach. So they bring in a couple new faces to try to just get the most out of the development of their players on defense. I think defense is where they need to make the most improvement, 100%. So we'll see how that ends up going, but I have them projected to go 9-3. Looking at their schedule, I see 2 or 3 games where they're huge games, and I don't necessarily see them winning those. Like, I'm not going to bet on them to win those right now. So I had to go with a loss there and a loss here. But overall, I think they should have a similar or better season than last year. I think that their ceiling is probably 10-2. Like I said, the schedule's not easy. And then a floor of 6-6. I think at worst they're a bowl team this year. I mean, if people get injured and stuff, they're a bowl team still. So that's kind of where I see Arizona. Then I wanted to talk about BYU. They had a fantastic year last year. Obviously, freshman quarterback Bear Bachmeier just came in and lit the world on fire in that number 47 jersey. I mean, what a quarterback number jersey, am I right? But I thought that it was a great year, and I thought that BYU kind of showed people that, hey, we might be an underrated team, but we don't have an underrated atmosphere. We don't have an underrated crowd. We don't have an underrated fan base. And I think that they kind of showed, like, in this era of college football, we can compete and we can restore to like what used to be great BYU football. BYU football was great in the past. So it's cool to see them get back to like where they were last year. Like I said, fantastic year. They ended up going to the Big 12 championship. They lost 2 losses all season, one Texas Tech, once in regular season, once in the conference championship. But they were pretty much the only guys, or the only team that could hold a flame to whatever Texas Tech had going on last year. So I think it says a lot about their talent acquisition, and I think it says a lot about their coaching, because I do think that a couple times BYU was not really out-coached or out-schemed. They were kind of just out-talented, and it sucks that happens a lot more in college football than it does in the NFL, but it happens. So after the rumors and stuff of Kalani Sitake, like maybe taking a different head coaching job and stuff, I think it was cool of BYU to bring him back and make sure that he comes back for this season and pay him whatever he wants. I mean, he just took you guys to the Big 12 championship, and all he needs is a little bit more funding probably to be able to get you back into the Big 12 championship. And so I think that it was really cool for them to go ahead and just bring him back. And I think you make sure you keep all your players in that situation, and you make sure you still got recruiting classes coming in, which I like. They returned a ton of production from last year. They didn't lose a whole lot of guys in the NFL. L.J. Martin, their stud running back, he comes back. I think he's going to have a huge year this year. They also brought in some talented transfers. I think they have the number 2 transfer class. I think it's 2 or 3 maybe. I don't know. But I think they brought in 5 4-stars, I believe, and maybe 1 5-star, something like that. But I think that they're an underrated team for a lot of different reasons. I think that the system that they run, like offensively, is hard to guard unless you have extreme speed. And I think that they just kind of got in a bad matchup where Texas Tech had the speed to be able to match them. So when you're in a situation and you don't have the edge that you think you have, you kind of rattle a little bit more than you think. So I think it was a little bit unfortunate for them last year, the way they matched up with Texas Tech. And Texas Tech had guys on the D-line and defense who was going to the NFL. So to me, I'm not really upset with their losses last year. I think that this year they should be a lot more competitive though. Like if they come out and they lose by 20 again to Texas Tech, or if they go to the Big 12 championship and lose by 20 or 30 or whatever it is in the Big 12 championship, I would be disappointed. I would say, this is kind of an underwhelming into the year, I'd say, just because the whole point of this offseason was to get good enough to compete a lot closer with Texas Tech or beat them. And you came out here and you got blown out by 20 in the Big 12 championship game after making it again. So ideally, they don't even have to see them in the Big 12 championship, but I do think the BYU Cougars are primed to go to the Big 12 championship this year, especially no Texas Tech on the schedule. I think the one thing that they can get better at on offense, they have schemed up throwing deep balls. Like, they scheme those up. Like, they have a couple deep shots every couple games, or every game they have a couple deep shots that they want to go to, and they have the speed on the outside to go to those guys. But Bear Bachmeier was like 20%, or I think it was 30% completion percentage on passes over 20 yards last year. That can't be a thing. That I'm sorry. I understand he's a freshman. He won like offensive freshman of the year, I think, for the Big 12. That can't be a thing. If you want to play quarterback and you want to wear a number like 47, you gotta complete long passes. Like 20 yards, it sounds like a huge pass, which it is a long pass, but that's in the NFL, that's really not a whole lot. And so I feel like for him to really take that next step as like a sophomore, and like a lot of quarterbacks and wide receivers, they go into these sophomore year slumps and these 2-year slumps and stuff. I don't think that he can afford to go into a slump this year. I think that he's gonna have to get better at those deep passes. I think he should have been working on it. I think they need to scheme up some more open plays for him. I think that some of the route combos last year they were using, they used a lot of Texas and stuff like that. Like, I think that's great because you have a guy like L.J. Martin, but it just kind of clumps up the middle of the field, and if you don't have the offensive line to protect him for that long, it doesn't work out. And so I think scheming him some deep passes this year and making sure that he has protection and time to make those passes, and if he doesn't make those passes, he doesn't make them. And at the end of the day, it's on him. But you got to at least give him a chance to make those passes. So I think that'll be a huge storyline. He needs to stay healthy for sure. Barry needs to stay healthy 100%. And the defense has got to improve amongst the top tier of the conference. Like, there shouldn't be as much pressure on the offense because I think the defense needs to improve against like Texas Tech and TCU and those top tier teams, Arizona State, like those top 10 teams or those top tier teams in the Big 12. It needs to improve against them. It just needs to. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. But I think it needs to. I have them going 9-3, because I want to pick them, man, to go to the Big 12 championship, but I just can't. I don't trust it. I don't trust Bear Bachmeier enough. I think that they have the best team and they're primed to go to the Big 12 championship and have a good 11-1 or 10-2 year, but they play tough games. They play Notre Dame. That's gonna be a loss probably. They play a couple other big games, and like I just don't see them. I don't see them winning all those big games, man. And I think their floor is 8-4. I don't think they lose more than 4 games this year, which is kind of crazy, but I don't think they lose more than 4 games this year. And I think they could go 11-1. I think 11-1 means they go undefeated in Big 12 and they lose to Notre Dame. That's not a terrible year. That's not a bad year at all. I think the possibility of them making the Big 12 championship is extremely high. Like I said, playing Notre Dame where they play Notre Dame is just weird. They also have like a really big game early on in the season, which is just weird. And then like they got like the Holy War like against Utah, and like that game can go either way, honestly. Like it's a rivalry game. That game, it's a huge swing game. I know like they should win the game, but like it's a huge swing game at the same time. So I think 9-3 is fair. It wouldn't surprise me at all if they go 11-1 though. So that's what I have for BYU. Next up, we'll go into Oklahoma State. So Oklahoma State's in a weird position. They had Mike Gundy for who knows how long, a long time, and finally they had a rough enough year last year where they just decided to call it quits on him. And so, disaster of year last year. They hired North Texas head coach Eric Morris. So he comes in, he brings in a ton of, if not all his talent, really, from North Texas. And I saw the North Texas team play in person last year. And to say that they were impressive is an understatement. I mean, they were talented. They had guys playing G5 football that should not be playing G5 football, if you know what I mean. And is that a credit to the head coach and the scheme and everything like that? Yeah, of course it is. But they have guys like Wyatt Young. I saw him break a few tackles last year that, I mean, it looked like he was playing Pee Wee football. And so I just think that there's levels to the players that they have, and I think that these guys taking this next step up from North Texas to Oklahoma State is not a big step up for them, because I think they were good enough to play at Oklahoma State originally, and for some reason they just messed it up. People miss on guys all the time. Recruiters miss, coaches miss. I mean, it happens all the time. Look at Trinidad Chambliss. I mean, coaches have missed on him. Recruiters have missed on him until somebody just hits the jackpot with him. You know what I mean? So I think that's kind of like one of those situations where, especially with the quarterback they bring in, Drew Mestemaker, everybody kind of didn't know who he was. I think he was like a 2-star recruit, and like everybody doesn't know who he is. Well, he like walks on in North Texas, and then like look at him now. I think he broke the North Texas single game record for passing yards last year. I mean, he's a walk-on. I mean, that's just a guy that people miss on. You just missed on him. and Eric Morris didn't miss. And so Eric Morris is bringing him along to Oklahoma State along with Caleb Hawkins and Wyatt Young. I think this is the most interesting team this year in the Big 12. It has to be the most interesting team. I think that the opportunity that Eric Morris has to come into Oklahoma State and revive it in his first year there, and just revive the program is huge. There's not enough to be said about what Oklahoma State used to be. When I was a little kid and when I was growing up, Oklahoma State wasn't some pushover that they became in this modern era of NIL and stuff. That's not what it was. That's not what it was at all. It was a powerhouse that you wanted to see them play. You know what I mean? It was a team that you wanted to see play because they were exciting. They had the black uniforms. I always loved those black uniforms. But to me, I think that there's something to be said about the revamping and the culture change, the culture shock that's about to go on there. Because I think that fan base is going to have to rally on Eric Morris, and they're going to have to rally fast because it's not an easy Big 12. But I think they can definitely surprise some people. This is a team with a lot of volatility. Like I said, they have so many new players. So for me to say that they're going to come out here and win so-and-so games, it's tough for me because I think, could they go out there and win 9 games? Yeah, 100%. Could they go out there and lose 9 games and only win 3? 100%. Who's to say they can't? I mean, that was where the argument would come in where, oh, these guys were good G5, but they're nothing in the P4. I don't necessarily agree with that, but there's just so much volatility with a team this new. I mean, we'll see it with other programs as well when we're going through like all the Big 12 teams, but there's so much newness on a couple of these teams that it's impossible really to know what you're going to get. I mean, it's similar to when we did the SEC. Like, there's 6 new head coaches in the SEC, and there's 4 new head coaches in this conference. That's a lot of newness. That's a lot of changing staff. That's a lot of changing players. That's, like, I already mentioned it with Iowa State, bringing in, like, 75 guys. Like, Oklahoma State is probably bringing in a similar number of guys. Like, they're completely changing the program. So we'll see how it goes, but I think they're going to have one of the better offenses in the conference this year. I think that Eric Morris knows what he's doing, and I think that he didn't get this job for no reason. And I think he immediately comes in and he competes with those of the best in the conference. Do I think that it'll be one of those things where they kind of start the year lighting the world on fire? No. I think it'll be one of those offenses that kind of just slowly sneaks up on you. And it slowly sneaks, and then by the end of the year, they're on fire and they're running away with games. So that's kind of what I see it as, but I think their home games are going to be interesting this year because I want to see the crowd. If they have 6 wins and they have a home game to end the year, I want to see what the crowd looks like. That's going to be a huge indication to me of like how bad the fans really want and these boosters want this team to be successful. The real question is defense. Even at North Texas, it wasn't a great defense. It was an all right defense, but it wasn't a great defense. It'll be interesting to see how he improves as a head coach on the defensive side of the ball because he's going to have to. Because you can have a flashy offense at Oklahoma State, but unless you have a defense that is going to still get you wins, you're not going to keep that job very long. It's not. Do I think they hired him for the long run and that he has 5 or 6 seasons to figure something out? Yeah, I do think that, but you got to figure out our defense eventually. I mean, it's got to happen eventually. I mean, I know he can build a program. I just saw it with North Texas, but he didn't set his hat on the defensive side of the ball. It was on the offensive side of the ball. So defense will be interesting this year. I think that's going to be the most crucial part of the thing, crucial part of the team. They have 60 new transfers. Trying to get those guys to play as one cohesive team is not going to be easy whatsoever, but they had a whole offseason to do it. And I think for them to really be successful, the defensive success will have to come early on. And I think that the home advantage, the home atmosphere has got to be good early on for them to have real chances in these tight games, these big games. Projection-wise, looking at their schedule, man, it's not easy whatsoever. They're 8-4. I think they go 8-4, and I think that's a really good year for them. Especially Eric Morris's first year as a head coach. Even if they're just 6-6 though, even if they just win a bowl game, or even if they just make a bowl game, I should say, that's still a huge improvement on 1-11 last year, and it's still a huge step in the right direction for Eric Morris and his staff. So even though I think they're gonna do better than that, I think they're gonna go 8-4. I think a huge win for them is 6-6, and that's what I have their floor as. And ceiling, I'd say 9-3. I mean, they still play really tough games this year. I don't see them winning 9 games, really. Really, if they're at their best of the best, I see them maybe winning 9 games. But a team with 60 transfers and so many questions on defense, I can't go out of my way and say they're gonna win more than 9 games. But that wraps up Oklahoma State. Last Big 12 team we're gonna cover today is an interesting one, I think. West Virginia. Major reset from last season. Major reset. I think they brought in 84 new players, commits, and like transfers, recruiting commits, whatever you want to call them. 84 total, which is crazy. That's a lot. Rich Rodriguez, head coach, he's trying to be able to run the ball. That's his thing. He's gonna run the ball, and I think that he has every right to be able to think that he can win games like that, especially at West Virginia, because I think for a while there, they kind of lost their identity. They didn't really know what they were. And I think that, like, the essence of when I think about West Virginia football, I think about Geno Smith and a couple other guys. But, I think it's important to not look at your past highlights, players, whatever you want to say, and credit them to one thing or one system or whatnot. And I think that running the ball could be extremely beneficial for them. I think, to me, it's like a blue-collar state, and it's a blue-collar way to play football. And I think with the major reset that they got, I think Cam Cook from Jacksonville State, he's kind of the head honcho over there now. He's the main back over there, and I think that he's going to be getting sometimes 30 carries a game. I mean, 20 to 30 carries a game easily. They're going to win the ball a lot, and do I think there's anything wrong with that? No, but do I think it's going to be hard to win games doing that? Yeah. I think it's going to be hard to win games like that only because you don't know what the defense is really going to look like. You have to have a defense that creates a lot of negative plays, a lot of chaos, a lot of incomplete passes to be able to win games by running the ball over and over and over again and controlling the flow of the game. I think he can win, and I think he can really shock some teams this year, for sure. But do I necessarily agree that they have the personnel to execute that system to perfection? No, I wouldn't say so. I don't think they even have the quarterback to really get it done. I don't think a starting quarterback's been named for them yet, but to be successful, you have to have a quarterback who delivers like timely throws. Like, okay, maybe he only throws 3 times a drive, but they have to be good throws. You know what I mean? Like, they have to be good throws. He has to hit them in rhythm. He has to be able to have rhythm and go from handing the ball off 5-6 times to throwing a dart. And to me, it's hard to find a guy like that in college for sure. But they're out there. And then also, it's hard to know you have one of those guys or think you have one of those guys when you haven't named a starter yet. So that's another tough thing for me. I think if the defense creates the chaos and negative plays, then they can definitely surprise some teams. I don't think they have the personnel on defense either. I think there's too much newness. They're not going to play as one cohesive team this year. There's too many new guys. Unless they really do some special stuff over there, unless they really get everything to turn around quickly. I don't see it happening. So I think they brought in 5 4-stars. 5. So like, they're bringing in a lot of guys who aren't necessarily highly recruited, highly ranked. Like, only 5 of those, like I said, it was probably like 80-something guys, new players that they're bringing in. And only 5 of those guys are 4-stars. It's kind of insane to me. I think those guys can really be an impactful player. In a team in a system like this, those guys are going to stand out like sore thumbs, man, because you're going to notice them more than you notice any other player, because when they have a big down, when it's 3rd and 5 and 3rd and 6, those guys are going to be the guys that they're going to throw the ball to. I think they're going to find some guys, like some hidden gems to be able to build on for next season and stuff this year. But I think for the large part, this is a rebuilding year. This is not a year where West Virginia is going to go out and try to shock the world and beat a bunch of these teams. I mean, they're going to try their hardest. I don't think they will. It's tough, man. I think they're going to play a lot of close games this year just because of the way they play football. I think they're going to play a lot of close games, but I can't pick them. I can't pick them not knowing what their quarterback situation looks like to really hit their ceiling. You know what I mean? I have them going 4-8. I'm going 4-8, and I have their floor at 3-9. And I would say their ceiling is probably 6-6. There's just too many new things going on in one place. I think that Cam Cook could really be a breakout player this year. Like, I think he could be huge. I think he could be one of those guys that everyone kind of looks back on at the end of the year and they're like, oh, wow, like, we did not know what kind of player Cam Cook was going to be this year. And he has crazy stats and a crazy resume at the end of the year, but, like, they're not going to have many wins to show for it. And he's got to stay healthy the whole year, which it's tough in college, man. It's tough to get 20, 30 carries a game and stay healthy the entire time. That's just not an easy thing to do. As you guys know, we do the G5 deep dive every week, or every episode, sorry. And we spun the wheel this week. It was one of those things where I'm getting down to so close to the season that I'm kind of just picking at straws. But we got South Alabama, the South Alabama Jaguars, if I believe is correct. I think they're an interesting team. They had a very solid offense last year, despite going like 4-8. They had a pretty solid offense. I think it was like top 5, top 3 offense or whatever in the Sun Belt. So for your conference, you have a good offense, but you're allowing 30 points a game on defense. That's not a recipe for anything, really. I mean, I don't know how you expect to really be a competitive team in the Sun Belt if you're giving up 30 points a game. That seems kind of insane to me, but they had a lot of really close games last year. Like, I think they only lost to Tulane by like 2 points or something. Like, they had a lot of very, very, very close games where, like, teams, like, this team kind of outperformed. Like, they outperformed in a lot of their games, but they still winded up with losses. You know what I mean? So, like, it's like their record says 4-8 last year. They're probably more like a 6-6 team, like, realistically. And that's why I think they can take a big jump this year. They have a lot of question marks on this team. A lot of question marks. I think the best core of players they have is probably their linebackers. The biggest question mark they have position-wise is 100% offensive line. They lost 4 out of their 5 starters, I believe. But the one guy they returned is like I think he was a Sun Belt All-Conference or All-American third team or something like that. Like, he was not a slump of an offensive lineman, but they returned him. And so I think he's going to be one of those swing players. Like, how well does everybody else fit in around him on the offensive line and blocking-wise? How well does everybody else fit in around him is going to be huge, for sure. I think the defense will have to improve, but I think it will improve. The way they attacked the portal, it was like all defense. Not all defense, but they've got like a lot of defense from like McNeese. It's like schools like that, like McNeese, and then like Furman, and like schools like that. They got a lot of players, defensive transfers from there. So like, I think they got a little bit more personnel to help them out on the defensive side of the ball. I think that their quarterback is going to be a big storyline this year. I think he threw just 12 passing touchdowns last year. I think it's got to be a little bit higher of a number. I know they rushed for like 30 last year. Pretty impressive rushing offense, honestly. But I think the quarterback needs to be a little bit better this year, throw a little bit more touchdowns. I don't think you should have to run the ball 3 or 4 times to score inside like the 10-yard line. I know you should, but like, I think that he needs to have a little bit more finesse on his passes and stuff. But I can't believe that they were really a 4-win team last year. It's kind of insane. Replacing that offensive line is really the crucial part. I think if they replace the offensive line, they're looking at a way better year than they had last year. If they don't replace the offensive line well, and they don't bring in transfers and have guys ready to fill these positions, and especially on defense and offensive line, that's where you kind of open yourself up to have a worse year and like maybe eventually get your coach on the hot seat. If you look at it, the way their schedule is, they play a lot of tough games. They play a lot of tough games to start the year. Like, they play, I think, Kentucky, Tulane. I think they play somebody else as well. That's like, they're hard games. They don't have many easy games. I think there's a couple really big games I wanted to highlight. They play ULM, and then I think it's ULM is like their first or their second home game. And then I think they play Marshall like halfway through the season. I think that is going to be a big game for them. I think the ULM game is arguably their biggest game. It's like kind of towards the start of the year and like kind of how they want to. It's kind of going to lay the foundation for how they do in the Sun Belt, in my opinion. So I think that'll be interesting. And then also in the year at home, this is kind of the point that like at this point in the season where I'm talking about the very last game, you're hoping to be at worst 5-7 because you still want to make a bowl game and everything. Or not 5-7, 5-6. My bad. You're hoping to be 5-6 going into like your last game, and their last game of the year is at home against App State, and I think that is probably a big opportunity for them to like take a different step ahead. Excuse me, like they're gonna take a different step in the program by winning like a couple of those games, and like even if they only have 5 wins at that point, if they win against App State at the end of the year, I think that's huge. I think that's a great win, and I think that's the kind of win that it culturally sets your team flat. Like it kind of gives your team a baseline of like, hey, end of the year we won, we're going to a bowl game. Like that's a great thing to say to your team with like one game left in the season. So I think it'll be interesting. I think projecting their schedule, I have them going 6-6. It was tough for me to think about like a couple of these games just because I don't know a whole lot about a lot of these teams. But like ULM, I don't see them winning that game. It's a huge game for them if they do win it. Marshall, I think that's a game they can win for sure. App State, another game they could win, but we don't really know what we're going to see out of a lot of those other teams. Like Marshall, we don't really know what we're going to see. App State is going to be a probably way more talented team than South Alabama this year, so that'll be interesting. Projected, like I said, though, 6-6, floor of 3-9, and I think a ceiling of 8-4 is not crazy. If they have the quarterback and the defensive play a little bit better this year, and they continue that rushing offense, then I don't see any reason why they can't win 8 games. I think that they can probably go undefeated in the Sun Belt. Just because of like the way the conference is looking this year, it's not looking the absolute hardest it's looking in the past, I'd say. Also, the one thing that kind of scares me is when they play these bigger schools like Tulane and Kentucky, how do they look against them? Because like if they score 20 points on Kentucky but they give up 60 or 70, I'm like, dude, no way South Alabama wins 6 games this year. But like if they keep it a little bit closer and they give up like 30 or 40, then it's something that I guess hang your hat on. But I think they have the offense to keep up with some of those bigger teams, especially Tulane. But that concludes our G5 deep dive for this week. I really enjoyed doing that part of the show, but for this next segment, the first segment of the Big 12, I wanted to do something similar I did for the SEC. I wanted to do my top 10 Big 12 games. So this was tough for me because I don't know as much about the Big 12 as I know about like all the other conferences. So this one was a little bit tougher for me, but I did my best. And I tried to look at a couple of different things, similar things I looked at whenever I did it for the SEC. I looked at like the atmosphere, the storylines in the game, when the game is played, if there's any like history or rivalry or tradition in the game, the talent really is the driving force of these games. Like if it's gonna be a star-studded affair, then I'm gonna have it higher than a lot of other things, unless it's like a big rivalry or huge storyline. So TCU at Texas Tech, that is my number one game of the Big 12 season, and that is purely from a football perspective. I want to say that like. Talent-wise, I think these are two of the most talented teams. Texas Tech is the most talented team. TCU is like top 4. And I think TCU schematically matches up Texas Tech way better than any other team. And you can also think about it like in-state rivals and everything like that. But I think that they scheme up the closest. And I think this is Texas Tech's probably hardest game this year. I think it's a big game for them. So I have that as my number one game. I think it's going to be a beautiful football game. Let me just say that. It's going to be X's and O's. It's going to be chess, and I enjoy football games like that. I think the defenses are really kind of the big thing to talk about of both of these teams. Even though I think TCU's offense is slightly better, I would say that the way that TCU plays defense will determine how Texas Tech really looks in this game. So I think that's going to be a huge game. Also, it's going to give us a good look at like how good is Texas Tech this year. So I think that's going to be a good one. Number 2. Got to go with the Holy War, man. BYU at Utah this year. Last year was a great game. I know people don't like calling it the Holy War, but I enjoy it. I think it's a cool name. I think Utah, I talked about BYU a little bit in this video, but I think Utah is one of those teams where they're kind of underrated. I know they lost a couple pieces last year to BYU, so it'll be interesting to see like those guys who transferred from Utah to BYU, like how exactly do they line up against each other and try to play against people they were just on a team with? I think that'll be an interesting storyline. Also, if Utah wants to have any chance really to compete in the Big 12, they gotta beat BYU this game. Like they have to. Like absolutely they have to. Also, they get it at home. They absolutely have to win this game. So, and I think they have the best quarterback in the Big 12. So, a lot of pressure on Dampier, but I think that they can win this game, and I think they probably it's going to be a great game nonetheless. I think Bear Bachmeier versus Devon Dampier, it's going to be a great game. Number 3, Arizona versus Arizona State, or Arizona at Arizona State, I should say. I think this is going to be a good game for a couple different reasons. I think this is probably a spot in the season where Arizona State is not having the year they want to have. Even though I think they're going to have a solid year this year, they're probably not at the place they want to be. And I think them upsetting Arizona at home would kind of be electric. And I think this is kind of where the atmosphere comes into play, like Arizona versus Arizona State, in-state rivalry, two big-time programs in the Big 12. It would be a great game, in my opinion, to see either two really good teams in Arizona and Arizona State kind of fighting for those whoever's competing in the Big 12 championship and stuff, or if it's Arizona's having a good year, Arizona State's not having as good of a year, like they're still 7-4 or something like that, but they're not having as good as a year, and Arizona is having a better year than them. They can kind of play upset. They can kind of play the villain role. So I think that game could be huge. I think it could go both ways, by the way. So I think Arizona could just have a bad year, start the year, and like it ends up being Arizona State like having everything to play for, but they get the game at home. But I see the more likely outcome being Arizona has a little bit more to play for here. But nonetheless, that's my third biggest Big 12 game. Number 4, Utah at TCU. This is probably this is probably TCU's biggest home game, I'd say. The big storyline here is really we at this point in the season, you're not gonna really know how TCU holds up against the rest of the conference, and not including Texas Tech. So to me, this is like their other big game besides Texas Tech, where it's like, okay, if we lose to Texas Tech, then we might not be that bad in the conference. We just have to play another big game to see where we're at. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I see it. That's kind of where I have this game is like, kind of like it might end up being like a pick-me-up game for TCU, or like one of those games where TCU gets them at home and like it's supposed to be a close game, and TCU just kind of blows them off the water, or blows them out of the gate to start, and then it is kind of I can see Utah slowly climbing back in this one. This is gonna be a good representation of who's the better program right now, because I think both these teams are at both these programs are kind of at a similar like level tier of the Big 12. It'll just be interesting to see who establishes himself as the better team, and I think this game is kind of gonna do it. Next I got Arizona State at Oklahoma State. I think this is Oklahoma State's biggest home game. This is 100% their biggest home game. I think that this will, like I said, I mentioned this earlier when I was talking about Oklahoma State, but the way the crowd and the atmosphere is in this game will say a lot about how much they believe in Eric Morris. Sorry. If they believe in Eric Morris enough to just go out and just kind of, I don't want to say shock the world, but to just go out and support him and just come in droves and just support him and have a rocking atmosphere in Oklahoma State, then I think this will be a huge game, especially if Arizona State is competitive in the Big 12 this year, like top 3, top 4, and like they're fighting for a chance to like go on and like play in the Big 12 championship, and Oklahoma State just comes out and that place is rocking, and they maybe didn't have the season they wanted to, maybe they're 7-4 or whatever they are, like say they have 4 wins, 5 wins, but like this is an opportunity for them to upset like a top 25 team, and they show up in droves and they have everybody there and it's loud. I think that will be a huge thing for their program, and that's why I think it's going to be such a good game. I think there's just 2 good programs, and I think there's just 2 good fan bases. So also we don't really know what we're going to get out of Oklahoma State, so that's kind of why I had to put this game at 5, because we could end up talking about Oklahoma State in the same title, like in the Big 12 title picture. So that's kind of where I was whenever I was thinking about it, and that's why I put it at 5. Number 6, Arizona at BYU. BYU's biggest home game this year, I think, unless maybe the Notre Dame one. Biggest conference game for sure. Arizona, this is kind of where they have the opportunity to just kind of spoil BYU's year. I think their quarterback, like the quarterback matchup in this game is going to be fantastic. I think the atmosphere should be fantastic as well. Do I think that BYU loses this game? It's tough for me to say that because I do think that Arizona would need to have a great defensive game for them to stop BYU at home, because BYU at home tend to score a lot more points. But this is a game where we, at the end of the year, when we're talking about Bear Bachmeier or we're talking about Noah Fafita, this is kind of where you say this guy's better than the other one because he won the game whenever they played. So to me, this is a big game quarterback wise. But yeah, there's that one. And then number 7, I haven't really talked about this team all video. Houston at Texas Tech. So my thing with Houston is they have a lot of promise and a lot of returning production coming back. Connor Wegman, he should have a great year. I think they have a pretty easy schedule overall. Texas Tech is 100% their hardest game, and they're 100% their biggest game. And so even though they have to go on the road to play them, I think that they still stand a chance in that game. I mean, Lubbock is going to be loud, but I think they stand a chance in that game, and I think this is going to be a great game for a couple different reasons. Houston is probably going to be trying to either continue or like really put their name into a playoff run. I think that they're trying to make the playoffs, and I think they have the schedule to do it because really they don't play too many hard Big 12 teams, but they can still end up in the Big 12 championship and maybe surprise somebody. Somebody gets hurt in the Big 12 championship. You never know. So that's why I have this game so high. I think that Houston this is the game where they can shock the world, you know what I mean? And this is the game where I see Willie Fritz, he really puts his name out there. So, and it's also a huge game for Texas Tech. Like if Texas Tech loses this game, then there's a chance they kiss their Big 12 playoff chances goodbye. So, I don't know, man. It's a huge game. I think Texas Tech has 2 big games, and it's these 2 games on this list. Number 8, Kansas at Kansas State. This is going to be, I mean, obviously a rivalry game, but I think this is a big game for a couple different reasons. New head coach over at Kansas State, and it's kind of another rebuild year, I'd say, for Kansas. They have a lot more talent, I'd say, Kansas does. They actually just got a couple Kansas State players, I believe. And so I think a mix of players having to play each other again, and then the atmosphere in Kansas State is going to be great. It always is normally, and especially in a rivalry game like this. This is the game where I think like the Kansas Jayhawks can probably show a lot of people that even though this is this new head coach and new era at Kansas State, we still have a football program over here too. You know what I mean? And so I think it's a huge opportunity for both these games, for both these teams. But the new head coach at Kansas State, if he wins this game, this is a huge win. You know what I mean? It's a rivalry win. Fans are gonna remember this win if he gets it. So I have that one at 8. Number 9, I got Baylor at Houston. I think Baylor is a slept-on team this year. I think people are kind of doubting them and doubting their chances in the Big 12. I mean, a lot of people expected their head coach to be fired last year. They already had the AD fired last year. So I think this is a big game. I would say this is Houston's biggest game besides Texas Tech. It's an in-state rivalry, and it's 2 Texas schools that kind of are both competing on the same tier of level. You know what I mean? Like, Baylor's a little bit more established all time and, like, historically. But, like, Houston they're trying to prove this year that they can come out and be competitive in the Big 12. And really, they want to be able to show teams, like last year they finished with 10 wins, 9 or 10 wins, I think. I think they want to come out and show teams like, hey, like, an undefeated season, we can pull that out of us sometimes. You know what I mean? And I think this is the year to do it. I mean, Wegman, their quarterback, has never had more experience. And Baylor, their head coach is as desperate as he's ever going to be. And so I think this is a big spot for Baylor to just show up and be able to win the game. And that's why I have it as the 9th biggest game, because I think there's a lot to be said about a team like Baylor just walking in and kind of ruining Houston's perfect year, even if they do get the win against Texas Tech. So I don't know. This will be a big game. I want to see Baylor competitive. I think college football is better when Baylor is competitive. So I think this is a good gauge of how Baylor is going to be this season, and we'll see how it goes. Number 10, I got Kansas at Oklahoma State. I threw this one in there because I think that Kansas, if Kansas goes into Oklahoma State at the end of the year and they lose this game, I don't think that they can really go into the offseason with the same feeling that they're going into that they went into the offseason with last year. Because Oklahoma State's brand new, obviously. Like, everybody they have on their team is brand new. It's their head coach's first year at trying this. And to be honest, Kansas should never lose this game. They shouldn't. They just straight up shouldn't. And it's tough for me because we don't know what Oklahoma State's going to look like. But if Oklahoma State is good, then it turns into one of those things where if Kansas wins, then it just takes away from Oklahoma State. And then I also think that the atmosphere, like I mentioned, is important for this game because I think it's going to have every single Oklahoma State game this year that's big-time matchup, whether it's at noon or it's at 7:30, 8:30, whatever you want to say, it has to be a big atmosphere, and it has to be an atmosphere that creates a change in the game. And I think this is a great game, both talent-wise and not only that, but this is kind of a sleeper game for me. I think there's people on Kansas' team and Oklahoma State's team who are going to surprise people this year. And so I think this is a game that you tell somebody who covers the Big 12, you say, yeah, this guy has Kansas at Oklahoma State as, one of his biggest games. Well, I mean, he would just probably be wondering why. I think there's a couple players on each team where they'll surprise people. But, yeah, those are my top 10 Big 12 games. It's very tough for me to cover this much stuff in one video. It's just a lot of research to be doing in a short period of time, but I'm doing my best. Please let me know in the comments, and drop a like, please, as well. But please let me know in the comments what I can be doing better to kind of put a little bit more effort into the production value of it. But let me know what else you guys want to know about some of these teams. If you want to know a tier list, kind of similar to what I did to ACC. If you want a tier list for this conference, or if you want, I know I'll give you guys my season win totals, over and unders, and whatnot. But just like I said, just let me know what you guys want. If you guys like the deep dive, if you guys like the G5 deep dive, then just let me know and we can keep it rolling. But other than that, man, I appreciate it. Please drop a like, comment, subscribe.